Welcome. So nice to
Hi.
meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
So yeah, we were talking actually just a little bit before we started rolling here, which was masculinization on women, and in particularly your relationship is what you were talking about, how you fit a very particular personality, right? That'll make you really good at relaying information, being able to communicate your points, have your boundaries when you need to have them, right? But also in a lot of ways, I was curious how it affected you in your dating life.
I think everyone has a combination of masculine and feminine energy within them. Mm-hmm. The ratios are going to differ depending on the individual, and the ratios are also going to differ depending on the environment, right? In certain environments, I have more masculine energy that kind of comes out, specifically work environments or environments where I'm around maybe more women, versus in other environments, I might have more feminine energy that comes out. And so
sounds inconsistent.
That's the point.
Well, that sounds a little difficult to, authenticity is very consistent, right? Typically where there's inconsistency, there's leverage.
I don't think there's any person who is one way around all different types of people. I think we naturally all have a little bit of chameleon within us, where we all naturally adapt to different environments and different circumstances. And sometimes when we're around, for example, family who we've known for our whole lives, we might interact with them a certain way. Whereas when we're on a first date and we don't know the person, we might interact a different way. Mm-hmm. Very rarely are you going to find someone who is completely consistent in their interaction and their personality and all of that, because everyone has layers.
Well, there's also a very big point to build off of there, which is people do have layers. How do you know somebody's fake? And that was something I wanted to talk to you about. Because you were talking, I like the terminology that you coined, which is high value male. Now it's become like an Instagram word, a buzzword.
I trademarked that word.
That's incredible. So I know now who it comes from.
Well,
and
I'll send you your autograph later.
I made this joke to you. I said, you've harmed so many women. Did you get it when I said it?
I wasn't laughing, because I don't think I've harmed women. I think I've equipped women with common sense skills in pursuit of helping them attract and manifest the life that they want.
So this is what I was talking to you about. Your definition of high value male. Go for it. Okay.
My definition of a high value man is something I think anyone who is an actual high value man would not even blink at. And anyone who's not would probably be offended by. And that is, essentially based on 4 pillars. Pillar number 1, financial success. Now, success is a metric that differs from person to person. One person's definition of success might mean 7 zeros in their bank account, another person's might mean something different. I personally look at the metric of success as what is typically requested by the majority of women, and that is 6 figures. So 6 figures is, and it's going to depend too on city, right? Like 6 figures in New York, $100,000 in New York is going to get you a lot, isn't going to get you as far, as 6 figures in Kentucky. But typically, depending on the city you live in, a minimum of $100,000 a year is kind of the baseline. The second pillar is someone who's well-groomed. Doesn't have to mean that they are,
it's crazy you have to say that, but I find it funny.
Ripped like Brad Pitt, but someone who's well-groomed, takes care of themselves. I worked in corporate America for several years. I was one of the youngest sales managers at a Fortune 500 company before I got into this. And interestingly, the men who all got promoted, the men who you saw at the top, they were well-groomed. Some of them had a little bit of a belly, that's not a big deal, but they were well put together. They had a clean shave, they were hygienic, right? People respect people who take care of themselves. Third, someone who's verifiable, right? Because you can be a millionaire and a drug dealer, and that doesn't necessarily equate to being a high value man. And the reason is women prioritize a man who will provide safety and security. And studies also show that women believe socioeconomic status and prestige are a top driver in their mate selection.
So, well, yeah, there's no question about it, but there's also a certain point where if women aren't aware of what they need to be provided for and what they need to feel safe around, then what's going to run their behavior is their insecurities, right? Because a lot of women do this. They'll find a guy that has money. They'll find a guy that does have status, but he's the perfect guy to have kids with. He's not the perfect guy to mate with, not all the time on a primal level. And if women aren't aware of that, then what they do is they pretty much take what you present there and they use it as a weapon. And it actually keeps them more unaware of what they do really want, right? Which is actually about being able to understand the dimensions of humanity that exist in dating. The reason why I would did want to talk with you today is because I do believe that a lot of the things that you do present are good on a rational level. But what people take, what they like to take from that, and they use that very thing, and they're not even aware of what's running the system that they have, right? So go ahead and tell me the fourth pillar.
Yeah. So we had financially successful, meaning a minimum of $100,000 a year. We had well-groomed.
Let's say you had 50K.
So that would not make you necessarily high value. That would make you high value in the making.
High value in the making? Okay, so there's tiers here. So a tier 1 is over 6 figures.
So Henry, if you're familiar with that acronym, is high earning, not rich yet, right? And by the way, little asterisk there, it's not just $100,000 minimum a year and that's it. It's consistency. So I'm curious,
that's
if you're shown
on a
over
date,
3 to 5 years.
Would you ask somebody how much they make?
No, of course not. That's important. That's
well, then how would you know they're not faking it?
Let me get around to that question after I address the fourth pillar. So we had verifiable and then networked. So you have
networked is the last pillar?
You have a community of other high value men or women that you associate with, because in a lot of capacities, your network is your net worth and you don't get to the top by yourself. So having a network of other high value people to essentially sign off on you, so to speak, really says a lot. And so those are the 4 criteria. Going back to your original question, though, of how do you know there are fakers? Of course there are fakers. You have to, as a woman, have good judgment, and you have to be able to deduce who someone is at a core level. You can look someone up on LinkedIn. That's the whole point of verifiable, right?
Well, they could also fake that too.
Well, that's why there's also the element of connections. So on LinkedIn, if you have 500 connections and people endorsing you, then that will speak volumes. And you can also look someone up. I mean, there are a lot of ways. Also, there are a lot of people who are for sure faking it on these dating apps, and they're posing in front of a rented Ferrari and they're making it look like they're super successful, and they're not. I actually think that's a bigger red flag. But you have to use your judgment. You have to use your intuition. You got to roll the dice in dating. There's no guarantees. But the reason that is the definition for a high value man stems from mate selection theory and the literature around that.
I'm very familiar with it. It actually stemmed a lot of red pill philosophy too. And I don't think that it's sound. I think it works in assuming this paradigm is true.
Well, I'm not necessarily subscribed to red pill philosophy. I'm talking about mate selection theory, which is
a lot of it.
It might be derived from it, for sure.
What my problems with it particularly are a few things. One of them is what determines a high value man is all of the things that you've labeled. None of them are characteristics.
Like qualities, soft qualities?
Qualities, honesty, ambitious, hardworking, determined.
Tell you why. Because in order to rise to the ranks of, let's say, a Fortune 500 company, in order to consistently make $100,000 a year plus, in order to be verifiable on LinkedIn and have connections of other high quality people.
You're using something as a determining factor of that, such as LinkedIn.
But I'm just, okay, you could have, I'm in Forbes 30 under 30, right? That's another, you could have that as
You're in Forbes 30 under 30?
Yeah, I was.
You were?
I was.
In Forbes 30 under 30?
I was.
Does that help you in dating?
Actually, yeah. But let me get back to your point. In order to become that type of individual, you're naturally going to have skills and qualities like integrity, a work ethic. You're going to have to be a good communicator.
Like the association,
so they all funnel in.
There's capacity. That's one level for men that they do need to have. And then there's also characteristics. And those characteristics are going to be far better, especially when it comes to mate selection. Because if we're taking this from one level, which is just mate theory, you could take a very successful, well-networked, high on the social status hierarchy, right? And then what was the last one that you mentioned?
Like well-groomed, verifiable.
Well-groomed and verified, right? But he could be about as masculine as a raccoon. there's not going to be any polarity there.
But
So I wanted to see where this works in relationship to how attraction works, because that's actually more important to people's longevity and their partner selection.
Put that man on a dating app and put a man who has honesty and integrity, but not a great job, not making a lot of money, not in shape, not any of that. Who's going to get more matches? Who has more leverage? Who has more bargaining power in the dating market? It is the first, not the latter. And so that is part of why that makes individual A of higher mate value in the context of the dating market.
I want to help you understand something here. You're taking the dating market, which is already falling apart and it's collapsing. What you have is 1,000 men.
It's actually expanding. It's expanding.
Well, it's expanding, but it's getting further and further between people coming together in reality.
But the dating market is a free market. And if people want to come together and actually form real world connections, that's a different conversation. That has nothing to do with the dating market.
Well, I'm not considering what you're talking about isn't so much a dating market more than it's a distortion of a dating market. Because if it was a dating market, people would be having children, getting married, engaging in long-term relationships. No, what you're describing is short-term usage of other human beings through platforms that make people think they're high value when really they're just insecure and deeply capable. So for example, if you take, for example, guy A, honest, integrous, hardworking, ambitious, right? And you take guy B, he mimics all of the things of a competent man. He has 1,000 women chasing him. This guy is part of the group of 1,000 men chasing one woman. That is by definition what you call a split. When this split happens, that means that there's a complete and total compromise of the values that allow this to exist. Because being one guy who has access to 1,000 women, which you would call the high value man, right? He's at the top of the hierarchy.
But we're talking about, so just to pinpoint something you mentioned, it's one thing to have access to 1,000 women. It's another to have morals and values that actually lead to you wanting to be with one.
So what are we rewarding here? So for example, if you had many people, because we're going to let you, this is something in my field of work, which is what's going to make people think they're improving in their life is trying to be guy B. And I've never downloaded a dating app in my life, nor will I ever. Also, same thing with my Instagram. I don't have that on my phone for the very same reason that it plays into something that doesn't exist. If you're looking for longevity, you're looking for matrimony, you're looking for building, you're looking for family, you're looking for individuality, then these things, technically on a market dating value, make a difference, just like being over 6 feet does, but that's never how the world has ever worked. So teaching people that this is how reality works not only hurts them, it makes them not face their insecurities that hurt them in their dating.
I think that school of thinking is necessary, but it fails to address how people actually select a mate. And it's gonna, mate selection differs culturally, but for the most part, if you look at the data and you ask women, I speak to women all day long.
As do I.
Great, so you probably know this. Women seek men who they perceive as being on their level or above. And typically,
across and up.
And typically, in the society we live in right now, especially with the rise of modern feminism, women make more money, we collect more degrees, that's all fantastic, but that narrows the dating pool because the more money a woman makes, the more
the less valuable she is to the man that she wants.
No, I was going to say the more she expects a man to make the same amount of money as her or more, and the studies support that actually leads to more longevity in relationships.
So let's take away the study. The more that a woman works to be like a man and to compete in a male environment.
Not to be like a man. Hold on. That's a very, I hate to use this word, but that's a misogynistic way to put it.
No, not at all. I think
to
interact in an environment that requires women to compete with men.
Sometimes women compete with women. There are a lot of female-founded industries that are...
And this has been shown, if you wanted to take your stats, that those women have zero to offer the men that they want. Because those men don't want a woman with a Lamborghini. They don't want a woman that makes more than 6 figures.
But we're not talking about materialistic... Listen,
but this is also what you were implying there, which was, if they make that, then they date guys like this, meaning that their dating pool is now constricted. And it's like, well, yeah, you're going in the wrong direction. And you don't want to reward that because that's not exactly true. Women with higher intellect, by default, are going to have less of a dating pool.
That's true as well.
Yes. And so that's also going to mean that, guess what? When you're dating only intelligent, the amount of intelligent people out there is actually very minimal.
But what are we disagreeing on? Because here's the thing
it's not about you. I'm disagreeing with something in particular, which is that when that happens, when a woman competes in the male hierarchy, right? Is she more valuable to men when she does that or less? on a dating market value level.
So here's the thing. It's not strictly about looking at women through the lens of how much money they make. Here's where a lot of women unfortunately go wrong, and this is where I think you're looking at it too. You're looking at it based on, if a woman is making this much money, she is going to fail at being able to attract a man. If a woman looks very feminine and acts very feminine, and there are certainly women like that, I would say I'm a woman like that in a lot of ways.
When you say looks very feminine and acts very feminine, does that mean she's feminine?
Yeah, it does.
No.
Yes, it does.
There's a lot of men who look very masculine and act very masculine, and there are two words for them: cowards and predators. Have you dated yet? I'm confused. You've been in Los Angeles for a year, yeah?
I have, and to me, if a man is a predator, then he's not masculine. He's toxic.
So then, why are so many women fooled? And also, why are so many men fooled?
Well, a lot of people fail to spot red flags early on. So that's a major issue. If you don't have a strong sense of self-worth and self-confidence, you're going to easily fall into a trap of getting involved with narcissists and toxic people, because your sense of what you feel worthy of is going to be lower. If you build that self-concept up, you're going to attract a mate who's more in alignment with you. But no, to go back on the earlier point, if you have a feminine demeanor and you have feminine energy, which is an attitude.
Well, so now we're talking about energy. What I'm trying to incorporate in this conversation.
But that's how you act. Your energy funnels into how you act.
Well, not quite, actually. People who are disconnected from that same fundamental energy, hence an insecurity around masculinity, will attract an insecurity around femininity from the opposite sex.
Yeah, it's a mirror, for sure.
Right, and so you're familiar with that being a mirror. And so what happens is that people with the same wound that don't question what masculinity is, women will do the very similar thing. And this is what I think is happening now more than ever, which is the weaponization of these characteristics. And
I think where we're differing is you would rather talk about problems and I'd rather talk about solutions.
No, actually, I would actually talk about solutions. You would rather mask the problem. And what I'm saying here is that the problem is at a core level in relationship to people's values and what's important to them. And if they do not have that in dating, it will not be manifested in who they are.
Well, so let's talk on values then for a second, right? If this is very true. You can be the CEO of a company, you can be in excellent shape, you can have the greatest connections, and you can have, verifiability, right? You can have those 4 characteristics as a man.
And you could still suck.
And you can have a bad attitude and a bad personality, absolutely. Just like you can.
Well, not even a bad attitude or bad personality. You could be quite literally disconnected from the values that make you valuable.
That's fine, but guess what? That man has more leverage in the dating market.
Correct. To women on a sexual level.
Correct, and more bargaining power in the dating market. And so because
he has more leverage.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, because he has more capacity.
Just like if you're Microsoft, you have more leverage in the job market than a mom and pop shop, right? So these things do matter, and there's a reason why Microsoft continues to be, a dominating company in the technology space. And so we don't look at it as, Microsoft's values are this way, and I want values like this. Like, sure, but that company's still making billions of dollars. So you have to think about it from that perspective when we're talking about
depends what you define as value.
Tips. So for me, and I would say for most of the people I coach, value comes from results. Right? So results, partly, if you want to really be an exception.
Depends what you define as results.
Being able to attract the caliber of person that you are looking to attract.
So let's say you're insecure. Your definition of your success is derived from a wound. That won't make you successful in dating. For example, my type of girl that I used to like when I was really insecure and would love to show people my status, my attributes on a dating market value, were kind of like the Margot Robbie type. The more I realized that was stemmed through insecurity, because that gave me more value than feeling connected to my own masculinity as a man, I started to seek that, attach to it, and get value from it. And then as I started to heal, I noticed that the very person I was attracted to started to change, because now we start to meet deeper needs. And these are the things that create longevity when you meet those deeper needs, not just so much the surface level dating pool. Because if you look at places like Miami, Dubai, LA, New York, these are going to be places that have one thing in common, is that with working with men and with women, both collectively do not have long-term dating ability, which determines the person's success in relationships.
That is because we are living in, that's a different conversation. We could talk about the generation in which we're living in, which has a non-committal nature. New York Post just came out with this front page, New York City being one of the worst city to date in because of the non-committal nature of people in our generation. Also because of the rise of technology and the integration of that into how we go about forming communication with people and relationships with people and conversing with them. And also because we have so many more options now than our parents' generations did.
Well, you have a lot of fake options. Those aren't real options. Those are hubristic options.
Well, they are options, actually.
For example, if I looked in my DMs, I have over 10,000 women saying, hey, wife application, right? Those aren't real options. And I want you to answer why they aren't.
Why they are not real options?
Yes. What do they really feed? Do they feed my needs? Do they build my life?
Well, if you responded to one of those women, any one of those women, you probably would have leverage to be in a relationship with one of them.
Yeah, but also you can...
So that would be an option.
Yeah, but that's also the whole thing, is that what do you want to reward? Through what avenues do you want to interact with? Right?
I like to help people get to where they want to be. And that is going to differ
that's
from
what I
person
want
to
to challenge.
person.
You want to help somebody get where they want to be based off of the current paradigm that they have of life, which could be deeply destructive, and you could be hurting them.
I could be hurting them?
Yes.
You could be hurting them.
Well, that's why you have to deeply consider where they're coming from. You have to listen deeply, right?
Your perspectives could be hurting people too. Everything is perception.
Well, not quite, actually. You have to really listen to where somebody's problem really is. I have a guy calling me, hey man, I'm really struggling in the dating pool. I want to be with this particular kind of girl. What do you hear?
I hear it very literally.
You hear very literally?
You want a certain type of woman, so we need to figure out how to close that gap. What is in between you and the type of... where I would start with a client like that is I'd say, okay, first of all, why is it important to you that you're with that type of woman? Again, I don't have a ton of context on who this guy is and what kind of woman this is. Let's assume he is out of shape and broke and he wants to date a supermodel, right? Let's go to the extreme. Okay, why is it important to you to get with a woman like that?
That'd be great if you can ask.
What does she represent to you? That's step one. Okay, she represents status. Where does that come from? Cool. It comes from an inner wound. Okay, we have a few options. We can either work on healing that, right? So that you maybe end up on a path where you actually just want someone who loves you for you, or we can work on making you the type of man that would actually attract that kind of woman. I am not here to tell people how to live their life. I want to help people get to their goal in whatever capacity that means.
So you did establish something, which is there are people who are wounded, and those wounds need attending. And guess what happens to people if they don't address their wounds, their insecurities, the aspects of themselves that they've repressed for years? They continue to go about hurting other people. And so, of course,
not necessarily. There are a lot of wounded, insecure people who are very meek. I think I think also you're forgetting something here. What do you think happens to somebody that doesn't externally put that out? Where do you think it goes? It can sometimes go within. Sometimes you harbor it for years and years and years. Not everybody. And what happens? Not everybody is. I think. Again, I'm very open-minded, so the way I look at it is maybe different than you, where the way you're describing it is everyone who has these unresolved issues within themselves is, not to be so blunt, but on the extreme, capable of going up and shooting up a school. That is not the case. There are a lot of people who have unresolved... I didn't say that. I understand, but that's
You just made an implication to something that was absolutely ridiculous. I was talking about something about people's human characteristics. If they leave characteristics unattended, what do you think happens in the next relationship when it gets triggered? It's going to differ from person to person. Yes, it will differ from person to person. Some people will continue repeating the pattern. Some people will continue attracting the same type of person they've always attracted. Some people will implode. Some people will cheat. Some people will be violent. Destructive. And I think we agree on that. Well, it's going to, again, it's all perspective. Like, what you described there, every single thing that you told me would be a destructive outcome if people do not confront the internal works in relationships. And by the way, I really mean this about relationships. We're human beings. Mate theory is in relationship to primates. And that also works with humans because we're part primate. But is that to say we're all primate? That'd be disconnecting us from the very thing that allows us to have the fulfilling connections. And that's what I'm on the side of. Because I know this is true for most people. You could take... I don't believe we're primates. Well, then, why mate theory then? No, I look at a primate as like a, like monkeys. I don't subscribe to evolution. Well, a lot of mate theory is based on evolution. So And that's where a lot of your philosophy
A lot of it is based
pulled
on
from.
human nature, actually.
So then we agree on this part, where human nature is a very important thing to incorporate, especially when it comes to dating, because we can hurt each other. You know, the incel that you were describing, the guy that, you know, not very good looking, doesn't shower, hardly ever goes out, and gives you a call and says he wants a supermodel, right? There's a long way of building to go in order to get that person to where he is, right? There's also a lot of internal turmoil that person has that hasn't even allowed himself to develop the basic human skills to be somebody desirable. So there's a long way for that person, right? But when it comes into the thing that I'm really giving you a lot of resistance on, which is helping people understand what is it they're really looking for to create longevity in relationships. Because if you were to have people give you a call and talk about how they want to make a change for themselves, or that they want a particular kind of partner, isn't that your job to challenge that, to make sure that they're coming not only from a good place, but from a place that would create long-lasting relationships? Because that actually helps us. You were mentioning a stat that was earlier, and I actually love you to say it again.
See, here's the interesting thing is when you say good place, that is subjective, right? Who am I to tell someone whether what they want is reasonable or not, right? I don't judge people based on my personal paradigm. You know, I try to be open-minded, meet people where they're at. So if someone wants, for example, a millionaire, okay. You know, I might ask some probing questions. Why is it important to you to have that? What does that represent to you?
Sure. What would that look like?
But I'm not here to say someone, you should actually go date the high school janitor because he's a nice guy.
Well, no, that's also another conclusion. But really, you want to be able to delve into the works of what somebody looks for, right? What is somebody really looking for? And these are questions that most people never really ask themselves. Majority of the dating market right now, social media, dating apps, or even if you go to any of the places where you meet people, they're fueled by insecurities. There's no value system that tethers people to a deeper understanding of why they do this to begin with. And the baseline of that is going to be using other people or hurting other people.
Most people, I believe, are seeking love. That is what I believe deep down most people are seeking.
Seeking love?
Seeking love.
What do you mean by love?
They are looking for love in a relationship. Right?
What does that mean, love?
What is the definition of love?
Because I'm saying most people think love is a biological impulse. No, it's a deep ideal that we struggle to achieve in our lives. It actually takes a lot of work.
Love is, I think, the result of an equation of hormones that are released, right?
I think that's where we disagree.
It's you know, dopaminergic. It's a bonding experience, and it's also a feeling.
What about the love that causes people
seen.
to sacrifice themselves? What about that love?
To sacrifice themselves?
Yeah, the kind of love that people have for people that are very, very close to them, that they'd give their own life for them. What about that love?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's
not evolutionarily functional.
I don't think there's a way to really define love in a very straightforward manner. I think just on a very basic way,
I want to understand,
people are seeking love.
Yeah, when you say on a very basic level, people are seeking connection.
Mm-hmm.
Love is a deep...
It's a deep connection. It's the deepest form of connection.
It's a connection that deeply challenges two individuals to come to a place to where they can actually access each other. And that's the practice of vulnerability, right? Because that takes a tremendous amount of work. Love is what we are here to achieve in our lifetimes. And opposed to it just being dopaminic or hormonal, I believe it to be the very urge that causes us to not only get out of bed in the morning, but to improve ourselves, because we believe that can exist. And it's not just so much the connection between a man and a woman. It exists everywhere, right? And it's something that we have access to within ourselves. So I think most people are lonely. And they hate themselves. And they confuse that feeling to be the thing that makes them want to love so bad. And I'm only saying that because I've worked, thank God, with plenty of people throughout this course of my life, and I've realized that there is one thing, is that love is an ideal that requires people to deeply connect to what they are authentically in order for it to be loved. Because if I only love you based off your projection, is that love or just what I've made you? So am I bonding with you or an idea of you?
Based on my projection or yours?
My projection of you, for example. If I had a projection at all, the idea of love already doesn't exist because I just love what I've made you. Love is a deeply challenging existential concern. It's one that involves the spirit, and I believe that incorporated into dating gets rid of the one guy with 1,000 women and 1,000 men chasing one.
But
I don't want to continue that. I want that to not only stop, I need that to be integrated.
Everything is a projection in life.
No.
You know, I love my dog, right?
Yes.
I love my dog because of the experiences.
What dog do you have?
I have a French bulldog.
Oh, God bless you.
Yeah, because of the experiences I have with her, and because I love when I walk in my, house, she is so excited to see me, right? But that's my perception of her.
Well, that's one-dimensional.
Experience.
That's one dimension of it. For example, some people hate French bulldogs, right? They like dogs with muzzles opposed to bulldogs, right? And so there it goes. That's a subjective experience. But you don't want to be able to bring that into things in terms of dating. That's going to be very, very difficult because we're dealing with two human beings. If I were, for example, to say that your emotions and you tell me how you feel, and I go, that's great that you feel that way, and I completely dismiss you. You don't want those to be subjective, I promise you. You want them to have something that allows you to be able to say, why is it when you do this one thing, I feel something, right? Which is why it takes two people in order to break a projection. A, you need to be aware of what you're feeling, what's in relationship to that thing you're feeling that makes you feel as strongly as you do. And then I need to be able to come in with the exact same vulnerability in order for you and me to both understand the objective about reality and how we actually mirror each other. So I think that there is levels of projections. Everybody has one. But does that stop them from being able to identify an objective reality to where they can come closer? Because I'll be honest with you, love doesn't exist if there's no objective reality, if there's no truth.
That was a lot of information on love. I think people choose people for different reasons. I think people choose to love people for different reasons. And I think a lot of it comes from how they feel in that person's presence.
So you hear that word feel? Mm-hmm. It's very dangerous when it's not tethered to anything real.
Well, we could go deep down the rabbit hole and talk about what's real, what's not. Are we in a simulation? Is this chair real?
Well, no,
we could go deep down that rabbit hole. But I think that is, it's a direction I'm not really interested in taking this conversation in.
Take it where you want to take it.
Because then you get into these, it's like these different theories, and it's like at a very basic level, most people want to be around people who they feel safe around, seen around, and they are impressed by. They
look up
seeking their partner. They see their partner and they're like, I'm so proud to have this person next to me.
I agree.
So on a very basic fundamental level, that's what drives most people, I believe, in having done this for years now, in mate selection. And the types of mates people seek are going to differ from person to person because we all have different starting points. We all have different visions for our life, right? Mm-hmm. And so, again, that's why I don't judge, right? I'm not going to judge you, for example, if your goal and dream in life is to be the next Tony Robbins. I'll cheer you right on. And I hope you find someone one day who also cheers you on and who you can look to and be like, yes, this is someone I want to create this life with, right? Just like I don't judge someone who wants to be a trophy wife. If that's what someone wants for themselves, that's what they want. Who am I to come in and say you shouldn't want that? But at the same time, it might not be the choice. It might not be the choice I make for my life, and that's perfectly fine. But that's the beauty of life: is we all have that, individuality.
Well, you want to be able. Individuality is a very big word, and as somebody that literally practices that with people, uniqueness is not just a product of trauma or insecurities. In fact, actually, uniqueness is something we struggle to bring out of ourselves. That's a challenge. Not everybody understands what that means to be unique. Not everybody even understands what it means to be authentic to themselves. We need one another in order to help that. To be an opposing force isn't one to stop people from achieving their dreams, but actually allows them to be the person that achieves their real dreams, not the ones that they've been conditioned to want. If my whole life I've been conditioned to want a red bus, even as I grow older, I'm still going to look at that red bus, but that doesn't mean that's what I want. And that's exactly what I live to do. I want to make sure that people really, really, really do connect to those things, because those are the things that will fulfill them. Because you don't want somebody to just be, a person that, I got the thing that I wanted, don't feel like I'm connected to him anymore. Women do that all the time. They initiate a majority of divorces too.
That's
well,
true.
that's a problem of a faulted system. It's also a problem of a lack of awareness. It's also a problem of people not being able to hold each other accountable.
So that's a different conversation then, because we can talk about relationship retention. We can talk about how to choose the right partner. We can talk about how to strategically date. We can talk about what a high value man is. And there is some level of interconnectedness in all this, but these are all different subsets of problems that need to be addressed differently. So if you want to talk about like how to date strategically, we can have that conversation.
Yeah,
but that's going to be different.
What's your outcome? What's your desired result?
So what I always say to people who work with me is, first of all, put on paper what you really want. Put the wish list on paper. Get radical, all of it. Right? We can't manifest what we don't actually have clarity on. And once you do that, outline some non-negotiables. What are you hardlining? Where do you draw the line in the sand, right? For example, is it a non-negotiable if someone has kids? Is it a non-negotiable if someone is a religion outside of yours or a different political ideology to yours, right? Why? Because I have seen that when it actually comes down to it, sometimes those non-negotiables, if you ignore them in the early stages, end up being the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Of course.
So
yeah,
we talk about divorce rates and all of that stuff. If you are screening for these non-negotiables early on, you're going to set yourself up for success. Is it 100% guaranteed? No. People change, people evolve, but you're setting yourself up for success. Also, I tell people, think about how you want your dream partner to make you feel, right? It's not all about what someone brings to the table on paper. It's also how you feel in their presence, what kind of life you want to create. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you see yourself in a mansion in Beverly Hills? Do you see yourself camping in the mountains? Do you see yourself building an empire as a power couple?
How many people play into the power ideology? And from your work, a subjective anecdote.
What power ideology?
How many people talk about the big house in Beverly Hills with a guy that makes over 6 figures that's over 6 feet?
You'd be surprised. Not everyone is actually motivated by that.
Well, I'm just curious, what's the percentage?
In my work?
Yeah.
I would say it's maybe 40-60. As in 40% of the women I work with are definitely looking to, meet a millionaire or a really affluent man. And 60% of them are like, I just want a really great guy I can start a family with. And again, I don't judge.
Sounds like a split.
Well, listen, if you are a high-earning woman, I think it makes perfect sense that you would want a man who makes more money than you. And the studies support that if women date down...
You'd also want a guy that's smarter than you and somebody that you look up to.
Sure, but actually the studies support that if women marry a man who earns less, the likelihood of them getting a divorce increases by 50%, because it usually leads to resentment. And the likelihood that that man will cheat increases by 300%.
So what's the conclusion that a woman takes away from that?
That they should be focused on dating men who are on their level or above, but bringing something to the table that caliber of man would want. And where a lot of women, and this is me being totally blunt, need to get a little more realistic is men are visual. The CEO will date the hot barista over the unkempt, out of shape, not as feminine female CEO.
Of course.
So if you want leverage with that caliber of man and you're a high earning woman, start to think like a man. Start to think about what men want and actually, almost like you were running a business, right?
Well,
ask yourself, is my product attracting the kind of customer I want? Mm-hmm. Not to summarize it and make it sound super transactional, but yeah.
Well, it's very much where you want people to be really focused on how they can be the best partner that they can be. And I think that solves 99% of the problems that exist on the strategic level of dating, right? Yeah. Which is, how can I be the most desirable I can be? I think that question is a beautiful question to ask yourself. And that is what you teach. And I was really challenging you because that is a fundamental aspect that can help people connect to themselves and to reality and be better, because that's actually who they are.
Just like if you want someone who's growth oriented, and this is actually the second thing I have my clients do. Once you have that wish list, once you have those non-negotiables and deal breakers, then ask yourself, what does this type of partner want in a significant other most likely? Come up with that list and then ask yourself, am I embodying these qualities? For example, if you want someone who's into consciousness and enlightenment and is spiritually connected and is going to go on retreats to Costa Rica with you, then it would be wise to become that type of individual yourself, right? Start to listen to, the Sadhgurus of the world or the Naftali Moseses of the world and enlighten yourself, right?
Well, I wanted to add something here. And it was that, actually, this is something I believe, that most people don't know what they want. And I'll tell you a story about one of my clients. Her whole life, she's been waiting to have this dream marriage. And I think a lot of people, if unaware of how their traumas have affected them and how even their overcorrection in their dating exists, they will never really get what they want. They'll just get what their trauma taught them. And you don't want that to be the case, right? As in, most people's lives are just a cause and effect. There's no real awareness or connection to who they really are. That's an existential question. That immediately incorporates higher consciousness. And that's going to be great in dating. You're going to need discernment, intuition, the ability to tell the difference. Those are all things that you're going to need. And so...
yeah, ask yourself why, And like for me, for example, I know that there are things that I want that maybe are a bit of a trauma response, but I've also come to terms with them. I've also accepted them.
Come to terms?
Yeah, I've accepted them,
I was going to bring up the story of my client. I think it would just provide a lot of insight, especially because I believe most women experience this curve in their life, right? She finally met the guy, 8 years older than her, successful, rich, handsome, depends who you're asking. That's a subjective answer. And they
attractive to her.
They dated for 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Why didn't he put a ring on it within those 7 years?
Well, they're married now, right? Because it was, remember, what she wanted. Now, after she spent $300,000 on her wedding, she started working with me, and she goes, "Hey, Naftali, I don't know how to tell you this. I want out of this marriage. I can't believe that I wanted all of these things. Mm-hmm. Actually, I never wanted any of these things to begin with. I'm done with him." And I said, whoa, hold your horses. Are you ready to see the absolute devil that you are? And then maybe we'll let you interact with this appropriately. So what ended up happening is that she had an overcorrection at a young age. She dated the guy that actually did turn her on a sexual level. And of course, her problem in her now marriage was, of course, her husband doesn't sleep with her, doesn't consider anything, doesn't even pay attention to her, has about the dominance level of a raccoon, and isn't very present with her. But of course, this is what she told me. I can't believe that this is what I've wanted my whole life. And then when I've got it, it was the very thing that I couldn't stand being around, that I wanted to run from. And that's why I really do challenge that people understand that what we really do connect off of is humanity. And of course, women in general will be more prone to date across and up, and that's going to be there.
And not to cut you off, but it sounds like your client was doing something that I advise against, which is dating strictly off of compatibility. I believe in order to have a really successful shot at a long-term relationship and partnership, you actually need 2 ingredients, maybe even 3. Compatibility, right? Are we aligned on paper, values, morals, the big stuff, the important stuff to each person?
It's called dating safe.
Second is chemistry, right? Is there a sexual tension? Am I attracted to this person? Do I want to rip their clothes off? Am I excited to be intimate with them?
Well, those are all signs of consciousness to ask that question.
And the third is connection. And so if she neglected the chemistry because she was so fixated on the compatibility, that's why she found herself in that situation. And if she was fixated on the compatibility because she was trying to, let's say, please her parents, right? Then that's also just, again, lack of awareness. But that's okay, because guess what? That's the point of life, to learn about ourselves.
1 second. I know that is one of the points of life, but to learn about yourself, right? And so this is what I was making very clear in this situation. She hasn't left that marriage. She's actually learning to understand that just like she got in that place, he did too. Now, this is the point where people don't just walk away, sign some papers, and go, deuces, didn't really feel quite like it used to a few months ago. It's where people start to show up for the actions that they've had in their life because they matter.
My grandmother said to me, Nelly, the reason so many people get divorced now, and I come from a divorced household, is they are unwilling to compromise, right? Compromise, yeah. They're unwilling to, like, an example of a compromise is like, okay, I will go to therapy for my partner even though I don't want to. Or, okay, I will actually make an effort to tell my wife, you look beautiful, even though that's not my love language, right? That's technically
I don't think that's a compromise. I think that's an effort. That's called showing up. Compromise is, there's this one thing that you want me to stop doing that I really connect to. I'm going to stop doing that for you. That's
okay,
just
a compromise could be like, hey, my
resentment.
wife really doesn't like it when that I smoke, so I'm going to make a compromise and a sacrifice, and I'm going to try my best to stop smoking.
Well, don't you think that leads to resentment if you really don't connect to the decision yourself? It wouldn't be a compromise then. It would be a suggestion that a person that
It
loved
can
you
lead to
made.
resentment, but that's why it's also important that if you love someone, it's going to be something that you're actually, like, you want to do for that person.
I think that it's very difficult to say that you would do something for somebody when you really connect to something yourself.
I think the best relationships are when two people can really be authentically who they are and they embrace each other in that way.
Yeah, and they learn how to sacrifice, negotiate. Those things are very different. If I'm going to give up smoking to come closer to you and I connect to that and make that decision, you were the embodiment of my improvement. And that's a really good relationship, which is somebody goes, enough with the potato chips. You're working out with me. And they go, you know, I've been waiting for this my whole life. Thank you for extending the invitation. I wanted this. I want it to be better for me.
Here's the thing though. Sometimes, and I know a lot of couples like this, you're in a relationship with someone who's not on a growth journey, right? They stay stagnant, you grow. And there's a disconnect. And that person doesn't want to get back on that page with you. You know, for example, let's say you were really, I was watching a TikTok on this today. This guy married this woman. They were like a gym couple together. They were really into fitness. She fell out of it. She stopped working out. She let herself go. Years have gone by. He's like, I don't vibe with this person anymore, right? If that person cannot get back on that page and is not inspiring you, I think it's also okay, even though I'm not a proponent I'm not an advocate, I should say, of divorce, because there are a lot of studies that show it's not great. But I also think you owe it to yourself to exit relationships and leave people who no longer serve your higher self. Because sometimes in order to get where you want to go, you got to let go of certain people, right? Your future life will cost you your current one. And that means you can't always bring everyone with you.
What you're talking about is if there's a core value that is compromised in the relationship, of course the relationship falls apart. And actually, divorce would be a very healthy thing to do because it was the very foundation by which the relationship was built. And guess what happens if we're both connected to each other and I kick the chair that you sit on, or you kick the chair that you sit on? It's going to start ripping you out of my back. It's going to be an excruciating, but you're going to start weighing me down. Right now, what I can do is I can continue to agree with this until eventually I have nothing left to offer myself, and now we're both torn down, right? Or you can accept your losses. So I wouldn't think so much that, and this is where I recommend one of the most powerful things that you could do, especially if that's happening, was where if they're veering from the things that they said they'd commit to their whole life, you hold them accountable to those commitments. That's what a loving relationship looks like. Hey, you know, for somebody, and we're taking the gym analogy, who's been hitting the gym with me for the last 7 years, and this has been a core value that has literally brought us together, that has made us connect on this level, and you haven't hit the gym in 2 weeks. Now there's a problem. I've been paying attention to this. What's going on? And then to extend that to them, of course, if they don't want to do it, well, then now I think you realize you have a much bigger issue. But truth be told is that people need to be looking at each other, attending each other throughout the whole process of the relationship, because we're destined to stray. Destined to stray. And sometimes that's our responsibility, because I always find it interesting. It's like, okay, why have we strayed? Why are we on the path now about to sign divorce papers or break up? And it's because you didn't show up when they started straying because you didn't think it was an issue. Now it is. And you're responsible for that.
Sometimes, though, if that person, like I said, doesn't want to get back on that page, or their life calling and life purpose is diametrically opposite to yours, then I think it's perfectly fine to part ways and, you know, seek out new people who are going to align with where you want to take your life, you know, and like that's just part of rolling the dice. And I would say one of the reasons, you know, going back to our earlier conversation of why dating has become difficult is because men and women don't understand each other as much as I think maybe they did back then.
Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it is cultural and media driven, mixed messages on social media, villainizing the opposite sex. I think a lot of it is, we have a lot of people in my generation, your generation, who come from divorced households where they were raised by single moms who always poorly spoke about the father or absent fathers,
Well,
right?
that's a very big issue.
Yeah,
There's
and
a
so
lot of villainization on both parties.
Yeah, and so like a lot of that was inherited because a lot of women, for example, who maybe came from a single, parent household with one mom who was, divorced and the dad is out of the picture, maybe the mom said to her growing up, never rely on a man, right? And
Very
so
harmful thing to
she
say to a
inherited
woman.
that hyper independence, right? And distrust in men. and also for a lot of men, right? If they didn't have a strong father figure, that could have been something that they absorbed. And obviously there are anomalies, right? Not everyone is going to have that same, be that the byproduct. Some people come out of these experiences and they actually thrive. But that's part of the reason. And I would say another part of the reason is just culture and the rise of like celebrity and, you know, the examples that we have seen, right? A lot of these celebrities are glamorized and they are idolized for their decisions. And that doesn't necessarily always translate in the average person's life. Like, for example, I hate to pick on her, but like you have people like Kylie Jenner, right? Who had, you know, these 2 kids out of wedlock, you know, now she's with another guy. Kylie Jenner is a billionaire, right? The average girl who's having a baby at 21, you know, and the dad's not married to the mom and he's out of the picture, you know, she's going to be financially struggling a lot more. That's just one example, but like that's part of the problem. And then, you know, we just have more people in society, so we have access to more. We have technology, and
I think people are more lost and lonely and disconnected than ever. And I think you could already see, because most people's role models are not even humans. They're like, you know, Charlie Jenner is a multi-billionaire, right? And so like the level of relatability, and that's your role model, like good luck, right? You're going to have a hard time interacting with the people in your life. And I don't just say this to anybody. Your life without social media will only improve because you'll start connecting to what's around you. And then the natural developmental process typically happens in life when you're not constantly comparing yourself to things that don't exist. Like, we have a culture that doesn't exist. I know that sounds really crazy, because it's not really based off reality. It's based off of people's perception of reality. That continues to get spiraled because more people are objectifying themselves to a media avenue of reality, but that's not a depiction of reality. And then of course that creates all this confusion to where people need to know their left hand from their right hand.
It's so important that people cultivate real world connections, friendships, relationships, work relationships, talk to people on the phone, see them face to face. So many people, I think, are not experiencing that. And that is so much of what life is people. And so if you don't have people in your life, it is up to you to seek that out. Get involved in your community, volunteer, work with people, take initiative, right? You have to create the life that you want. It's not just going to find you. And I implore people to do that, because it really makes life so much more colorful and so much more exciting. And
it's almost like you're alive.
And we're not guaranteed that we're going to come back. You know, you could reincarnate as a tree, and I hope that doesn't happen. But like, I think if you really want to make the most of life, find people who align with your higher self. Start to really become in touch with yourself, and you're going to put yourself more in alignment with the opportunities and the people and the experiences that you're actually trying to manifest. So, yeah. Wonderful.
Well, now we did high value man. So what's high value woman?
High value women. Well, in speaking to a lot of men, I'm a matchmaker. You know, across the board, the qualities that come up the most, and it does differ from men, you know, to men. Like, some guys really want a career woman, even though that might shock some of the people listening. And some men actually really want a submissive woman. And again, I don't judge, right?
What do you think the ratio is of women who want dominant men and men who want to be submissive to their women? It'll really shock you.
I don't know, honestly. It's so spread. I would say most men, I don't think, want to be submissive to women.
Almost all women want to be dominated. But if you want to know something about most men now, a lot of them want to be submissive. So we have a disconnect.
Well, I mean, I haven't spoken to too many men who want to be submissive, but I think a lot of the men who I've worked with, for example, who are East Coasters, specifically, you know, they want a woman who they are...
We're talking in relationship to sex. And I think that definitely mirrors a lot of the external manifestation of people's lives.
Yeah, I don't pry into what people's sexual desires are.
Really? I mean, it's a great thing if you want to help them dating, because they might actually get what they want.
Yeah, I'm not a sex coach. I'm a dating coach. So
there's a lot of sex in dating.
Well, I think biggest hurdle for most people who I work with is actually just getting dates. Actually getting dates and getting dates with people of the caliber that they want. That's like the biggest hurdle.
Getting dates with the people that they want. But I mean, there's sex in that at some point, right?
That's presumptive.
What? What's the point of dating?
No, that's assuming that they're going to make it that far. That's, hopefully they do.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole point of dates isn't to buy dinners. It's to develop a connection and to build off that connection.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a hot take, I know.
it's, well, I think it goes past the realms of my coaching to dive into what people's sexual fantasies are.
Well, no, not so. It's more of about what people really connect with, and it's a big thing for women. It's that, you know, they think that they want a particular kind of guy until they get that particular kind of guy and realize that all of their other deep basic needs are no longer there, and there's nothing that this person can do, no matter how rich or wealthy they are, to meet those things. And to develop an integrated person.
That's more relationship coaching.
And so you're talking dating. I think that's why we're differing here. You're coming from dating, I'm coming from relationships, and I'm trying to think about where's the difference.
Well, the difference is you're dating to get a relationship, and you're talking about relationship
so you would have to
retention.
call me up after they get the girl and then realize they have all these problems. It doesn't allow them to keep dating.
Well, no, it's also partly, I mean, largely energy, right? You're on a date. That's where I said the chemistry comes in.
Of course.
When you're around someone, you feel their, you know, you're absorbing their pheromones, and then you're kissing them, and you're seeing if there's a connection there, and how they touch you, and the little micro mannerisms that they do, right? All the sexual energy that's built up in those experiences on those dates. And yeah, if you do make it to a point where you become intimate with someone, then you can also assess how you feel after that point, right? Actually, Nelly, he was really great and awesome, but he sucked in bed. Okay, cool. Is this fixable, right? But that's a case-by-case basis.
Okay, so that's when you'd be dealing with things around sex.
Yeah, that's on a case-by-case basis. If they, you know, if someone's intimate and they want to share details about that with me, and, you know, they're seeking clarification because there was maybe an issue, or maybe it was awesome. They're like, damn, this person checks all my boxes. Now the question is, how do I ensure I don't self-sabotage?
Yeah, because that's exactly what happens.
Right? They're great in bed. They're great on paper. Am I in over my head here? And it's like, oh, that's a worthiness issue, right? That's you having a lack-based mindset issue. Instead of being abundant, like, no.
Well, it's actually you being a human being experiencing insecurities to things that are very powerful, right?
Sure, but then my response and coaching strategy around that is like, why wouldn't you have a great sex life with the man of your dreams? Why wouldn't you be able to manifest the woman of your dreams and have awesome, you know, intimacy and like have these incredible experiences? Like, why not? Right? And like, that's the mindset I want people to have, instead of always anticipating the worst case scenario.
Well, that's unfortunate, because most people do anticipate the worst case scenario. And the unfortunate part of that is that actually hurts others. And that's something I've been realizing in my field, is that what do you think happens to most people when they like somebody? Do you think they treat them better? Do you think they show up more? Do you think they're more kind and compassionate? Do you think that they're more vulnerable? It's on the contrary.
A lot of people push that person away.
They push the person away, they hurt the person, and they don't even know what they did, and they actually sabotage the connection. They talk to another guy, or the guy talks to another girl. And these things are all the byproducts of, if you were to make people the best daters, it doesn't exactly make them good people.
Well, I work with people on attachment styles too. And so, you know, trying to go from anxious to secure, or avoidant to secured.
And what do you do with that? Like, what do you do to
well, first of all, it's about identifying where it comes from, which it's usually from childhood or like a previous relationship. And then it's, you know, the strategy is going to differ from person to person. A lot of the times it's affirmations and, you know, really like working on negative self-talk and speaking to yourself about your situation in a more positive way. And also expecting the best case scenario instead of always living in this fear and this worry and this anxiety.
Yeah, it's difficult. People are going to need values if they want to face that. It's very hard to face somebody that you really, really like, unless you know you're like, I believe in saying the truth. I believe in being vulnerable. You know, I more than anything would value a family, and those things are going to take confrontation. And that's where I feel like the big disconnect is that I don't know if dating could be functional if it's not for the sake of building something.
It's tough. You know, I think for a lot of people to be vulnerable. But I also am a big believer in trusting in the timing of your life and not trying to hyper control everything.
Yeah, that takes faith.
Yeah. And I also believe in, and this is, I guess, controversial to some people, but I believe men feel the most masculine when they're leading, and women feel the most feminine when they are following.
The most polarity.
In dating. And so women like to be pursued. Men, I think, like to feel like they're earning a woman. They like to feel like they're...
Women like to be pursued?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that comes from insecurity. Not you particularly, but I think that women like that idea of being pursued. You're just going to get a silent predator if you continue pursuing that.
No, I think women, they like consistency and they like knowing that the man wants them.
Of course, to desire a woman and to pursue a woman are two very different things.
What is pursuing in your words?
Well, for example, in a lot of ways, you go on a date with a girl. Who's supposed to hit up who, right? And even from my dating coach experience, which is actually really how I started this, before I went into the intimate relationship aspect of things, which is technically the same thing, just with a little more attention. Is that typically confuse pursuing somebody who desires you and wants you, making an effort for you, as somebody who is just persistent. Persistency, women typically think is desire. It's not desire. Desire is inviting somebody to be in your life. Now, there's also a certain point where he goes, hey, I'd like to see you tomorrow. And if there's an insecurity that a girl has, and she goes, well, that's not enough. I want him to chase me.
Yeah, and I think that's playing games, and I don't promote that.
Mm-hmm. I would actually say that it's better for, and 9 out of 10 times, it's better for women to go out of their way to pursue the men that they desire, that they respect, that they admire. 100% of the time, their effort is going to be their currency for those kinds of men.
Well, you said that you disagree with men pursuing women, essentially, right?
No. I said that I disagreed with men pursuing women, and that women should pursue the men that they desire and make an effort for those men.
But why should the men not pursue the women they desire?
Because for one reason, you want to get her to show up to your life. And that's very important to building. But of course, when most men need to feel powerful, so they'll externalize that in dating, and I don't recommend
unclear.
that.
So why is it better for women to pursue men?
Because they reward that man for being what he is.
And the man should not reward the woman for being who she is?
He'll take care of her and provide for her. If he doesn't extend that to her, then he's mimicking something. I'm talking about a man that goes, come here, honey.
I know plenty of women, so here's where issues arise. I know plenty of women, and I was admittedly once like this myself, where they've pursued men only to be rejected. And women especially do not deal well with rejection. Most women want to feel cherished. And so it doesn't make women...
Most women are insecure too, as are men. Nobody likes to be rejected.
I mean, that's like a mute point. Everyone has insecurities.
Well,
so
when a woman goes up to a guy and goes, hey, I like you, let's keep doing this. And when a guy goes up to a girl and he goes, I like you, let's keep doing this, they both tango with rejection. And that's exactly what makes it a very vulnerable interaction. It's also what makes it real. But now to overcorrect somebody who gives you attention will just leave you with somebody who is mimicking desire. There's a big difference. It's like, at the end of the day, I accept this myself. I have to be able to extend my hand in dating. I want to keep doing this. And then reward that. And if that's not happening, then there is no clear path of action beyond that. And then it becomes the silent game of who chases who.
Yeah, I think
that's a power game, by the way.
Yeah, I think, for sure. I think there's several layers. One is being comfortable with vulnerability, right? Most people fear rejection, right? And sometimes on the other side of fear is the greatest love story you could ever imagine. But you roll the dice, you roll the dice, because what also is very plausible is that person giving you an answer you don't like. And yeah, that's nice because it's clarity, but it's also potentially, heartbreak and months of sadness and all the other implications, right? And so I understand and acknowledge why people are sometimes fearful of being vulnerable in that way, and transparent in that way about their feelings. And then as far as who pursues who, I don't think it's so black and white where it's like men should pursue women, women should pursue men. I think it's more, though, in my experience, and knowing a lot of couples actually who are in unhappy relationships, typically if a woman is doing too much for that man and overly pursuing that man, he will start to resent her. And
he won't respect her, actually, because it's not the product of somebody who has any self-worth, right? If they keep coming back after you bat them away, maybe they like it, and then you're going to bat them harder, right? And that's a sad truth about human nature.
So I think men need to feel like they're always working for that woman in order to feel their most, because men are competitive, you know this, right?
Well, there's a healthy level of, and it's hunt. Every man needs to hunt his partner.
And that's what we agree on.
Yes.
That's what we agree on. And maybe we're using different words, but fundamentally we agree on that.
And it's a mutual thing. It's mutual hunting. And there is a level of play in that. And the reason why I do this is because most people come from the place of insecurity and a desire for power, right? Most men feel like they're themselves when the woman is chasing them. That's not a good thing either, right? Because your self-worth is dependent on where she is and how far she is, and then that changes your behavior, and then you're like, I don't want this anymore, right? So it takes a tremendous amount of awareness of what exactly you're trying to create with each other. But I notice that 9 out of 10 times, if the guy is a very, and we'll use your term, high-value man, a woman's efforts is going to be the currency of what makes that relationship work. And now I'm going to say this one more thing. If he does not respect your efforts, stop. And that's where women go wrong. So what I believe the dynamic is a man pursues the things in his life that allow him to be capable, strong, caring, and kind, to continue to contribute and provide to her. And if she continues flowing herself through that relationship, showing up to that, of course, if he doesn't reward that, stop doing it. As a woman,
so
that's exactly where they go
here's where I maybe disagree. I think women should show interest. I think women should drop the handkerchief. I think women should, cast bait. I think women should make their attraction known. But I don't think they should pursue. And to me, pursuing is like, hey, want to go on a date? Like that to me.
Well, that would be beginning interactions.
I'm sorry?
That would be in the beginning. For example, there is the classic courting process, right? And after the first date, things go really well. And I know it's a controversial take. Who hits up who?
I believe, who hits up, that's kind of ambiguous.
Well, who pursues who?
Who asks who out?
Yes.
Ideally, the man asks the woman out.
100% of the time, the woman should ask the guy out. If he got her number, if he took her out, and he paid for the date.
Oh, but then that would be
and then he said, I had a great time seeing you. She does that.
She does what?
She makes the effort to make sure that second date happens. Because this what creates a healthy dynamic. And it gives him the ability, and by the way, as all women do, they want to be there for a partner.
Okay, but that's assuming the first date's already happened. I was referring to the first date actually taking place. In my opinion, if you want to get on the first date, the man, the woman could, again, show interest, whether that's swiping right on that man on a dating app, agreeing to meet him, complimenting him, body language if it's an in-person connection, right? Showing interest in whatever capacity that means. Giving the man an opening and a window to say, hey, if you ask me out, I'm okay with that, right? And then it's up to him to actually do that.
Well, you can find this really crazy, but like if a guy likes a girl, he'll ask her out, which is to tell every woman on planet Earth is that clearly if you want to know if he likes you, he'll make it clear. Men work that way. And so
if he's not asking
if you dropped your handkerchief and he's not asking you out, he's not interested.
Correct.
Right?
So this is why I wanted to just get clear on that is like that if you made your intentions clear, you showed interest and he didn't ask you out, don't ask him out. That's my position.
Yeah, of course. And
that's where I thought you were saying, women should pursue men. I disagree if that is the case.
There's a certain point where, a guy really wants to know that he has utilized his masculine instinct in order to, quote, conquer, right? And there's also a certain point where you really want to let that shit go because that's where the real dating happens. The real dating happens when you guys get to experience each other resolving conflict together.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think, because we both live in Los Angeles, do you think that a lot of I'm referring more to the pool of men in big cities like LA. Do you think that a lot of men here who have a lot of options, right, objectively high value men, maybe not your definition, but certainly mine, do you think that those men will choose the woman who is actually aligning with their values over just the easy girl? Because here's where I think a lot of men are at right now is they are intimidated by a woman who does have a good head on her shoulders, is smart, is wifey material, is aligned with value, their core values. But I think that sometimes that can scare them off.
Well, you have to understand that most men nowadays are juvenile, meaning that they can talk all they want about how much they want a woman that's a wife and a mother, but they don't believe it for shit because you have to look at their life. A man that's connected to his values understands that his sexual nature will evolve in relationship to his values, meaning that he will now incorporate that. He'll bring it to the place that allows him to be seen the most, which is going to be where he truly desires, and that's going to be in relationship to building a family, that mother, that wife. And a lot of men don't have that. And you're going to find this really interesting dating in Los Angeles or dating in any big cities in general, is that it's very easy to mimic like you're somebody that wants that. If you really want to know the difference between a shithead man and a real one, ask him his past relationships and where his dick has been in the last 12 months. You'll learn a lot about him. And that takes skills, takes dating skills to ask questions and learning how to do that.
I don't know though, because for me, having worked with a lot of men have sexual needs, and I don't fault them for that. So if they want to be sexually promiscuous, that's their business. And I think a lot of men have the ability to do that without catching feelings for those women.
Yes, it's called detachment, but it's also not a form of somebody who can create intimacy. Longevity requires intimacy. A majority of people have intimacy disorders, meaning that with people that they really desire, they cannot display sexual interest. That's a big issue, because if women don't know how to do that with men, that means that they reward men that suck, and the men that they actually want to be with, they can't show up for.
You think a man can desire a woman and completely hide it?
Yes.
You think that's common?
It's actually far more common with women that they desire in the long term. So if a girl is pretty, she's smart, she has shared values, men are far more likely to hide their sexuality if they're not integrated with it, meaning that they have a juvenile relationship with sex. Very promiscuous, pornographic, prostitution, etc. Those things will create men veering from what they want, or at least what they say they want.
But if a man wants that type of woman, and that type of woman would be right in front of him, hypothetically, why would he, wouldn't his inner hunter and that animalistic side of him come out? It's just so suppressed?
It's because most people don't have any kind of human nature. And this is might take a little bit here, because I want to be able to give you, because this is a big issue that's actually happening a lot of the time, is that people think that people's sexual behavior doesn't matter in dating. It absolutely does. It changes your ability to show up for people that you desire. One of the most important, powerful components of a healthy relationship is going to be your sex life. Physical attraction and sex are like this.
So in that case, for example,
I wanted to be able to clarify this, because it is a big point. It's actually something I talk about a lot, and it's really unfortunate, is that actually men are far more prone to hide with the woman that they can have a life with than they are with the woman that they could sleep with in the bathroom stall. And what creates a very honest man is that he presents the ape, the gorilla, the primal aspect of him to the woman that he can have a principled, valued life with. Now it becomes honest. Women have the exact same thing, where when it comes to looking for a guy that they want, they'll wait to the third date. But if you look at their sexual history, they're not waiting to the third date with guys. They're going right in the bathroom with them, which is okay. Do what you want to do, right? But at least be honest with who you are, with the man that you want to do the most honest thing with. Mm-hmm. Then that creates what you call a foundation to where nobody's hiding. And it is really sad, because men are going to be far more prone to hide this part of them when it's the exact thing that they need to incorporate to create the longevity they seek with that partner.
I would agree. I mean, in my experience working as a matchmaker with a lot of men, one of the reasons they work with me and they seek out matchmaking is because they are really intentional about dating, and they are trying to strategically find a partner who aligns with them, and so that's why they're working with a matchmaker. But perhaps, per your point, and I'm sure this is true, there's a whole other pool of men who are not working with matchmakers because they're just trying to hit it and quit it, right? And that maybe also makes them feel more masculine, the fact that they're able to spread their seed. And
see, that's where the dangers happen, and this is something I've been really working on, is that a lot of men associate particular characteristics of masculinity when they have no fucking idea what that means. It's like, okay, what's masculinity? Conquer women. What's masculinity? Make a lot of money. It's like, well, these are characteristics of somebody who's connected to their masculinity, is that they will have what you call options. They will have the ability to actually provide something, meaning that their lips aren't just lip service. They have something behind their words. But to really connect somebody to what it is to be masculine is genuinely through an understanding of, I mean, it's a deeper question, because if people just kind of go off what they think it is, then it's going to be tattoos, Harley Davidsons, and lots of money. And people have different definitions of that, which typically creates a problem. But I do believe that it comes from a place where men could genuinely be kind and compassionate, where they have the ability to give, and they could be respected for what they give, meaning that they're not pushovers. So they need to be a son of a bitch in order to be a good man. And I think that when a man has both of those things together, he creates a very sturdy, masculine individual.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that a man cannot be a pushover, because obviously a woman will start to look down on him at that point and start to think, oh, well, if he isn't decisive, if he's not assertive, if he's not able to really lead and stand firm in where he's at, then she loses respect for him. So it is important that a man has those characteristics, certainly. But back to what you were saying about making a lot of money and getting a lot of women, how do you get a lot of women? Well, a lot of the times it is certainly through social status and through socioeconomic status, but it's also through game, right? It's through game. And so in order to make a lot of money, and this goes back to my definition, right? You have to be a decisive person. You have to be somewhat assertive, right? If you're going to be a leader and you're going to be, for example, a CEO of a corporation, or even,
This is what I wanted to make a distinction about. I don't want to interrupt you. There's a big difference between a high-value man and a person with high-value characteristics. The high-value characteristics will not only be better with women, he will be more respected by the women that he's with. Will he be looked at like head-turned as much? No. But he will have more leverage in every relationship he's in. And I think this is where men go wrong. They're like, I want to look this way. It's like, no, you need to have the behaviors of a high-value person to be high-value, because behaviors are rooted in belief.
If you
it's
want
very
to
hard
be,
to mimic that.
Listen, if you want to be the whole package, all the bells and whistles will take you a lot farther, right?
All the bells and whistles will also give you more vices. And I don't want people to become confused with what is exactly the real deal. The real deal is somebody who's connected to those behaviors. Those behaviors typically manifest in those things. And by the way, also gives women room to show up for the men that are making six figures a year. And that's important for evolution.
And I would say, though, like you'd ask me, what is a high-value woman, right? And speaking with a lot of men, being cooperative, being agreeable, doesn't mean making yourself smaller. It means being a team player, right? It means letting a man lead you. Being feminine in your appearance and in your mannerisms. And also, again, I'm going to get some hate for this, I'm sure, but yeah, being in shape, right? Taking care of yourself physically.
Getting get hate for that?
I'm going to get hate for that for sure. Because
you get hate for anything these days.
Yeah, well, because, I actually ran a poll on my Instagram once and I asked women, what do you think's harder? Losing 15 pounds or making $1 million? And they, overwhelmingly voted that losing 15 pounds was harder than making $1 million, which I thought was funny. But I guess it's subjective. But no, so it's, a lot of women get offended by that. And the reality is, in speaking with a lot of men, high value men, right? The most desirable men in the dating market, the men that most of the ladies listening to this who are single would say that they want, right? High earning men. They, for the most part, want you to be in shape for your body type. Doesn't mean you have to be Victoria Beckham skinny mini.
Yeah, be healthy.
Crazy
idea.
Yeah, I mean, being extremely overweight, unless you're, gorgeous and all that, and even then, it's just harder. That's the point, to get with a high socioeconomic status man. So that's one of the components. And also, being able, like I said earlier, to let a man lead you.
It takes a lot of courage as a woman to let a man lead you, because that involves submission. And that kind of submission shows feminine greatness. It's not commonly taught, and it's a difficult thing to do too, by the way. A lot of women don't even have vices to that kind of vulnerability.
Yeah, and a lot of women look at it as a sign of weakness. I would never stroke a man's ego because, then
I like this to them.
Yeah, well, then I'm putting him on a pedestal. It's like, you actually will get a lot more probably out of that man, right? And this is how I speak to women. It's like, if your goal is to be treated like a queen, you got to treat him like a king. It goes both ways. And so it's a dance, but would you agree that with, those characteristics, you think that a lot of men are looking for that? And then, of course, if we want to get into the soft skills, it's like, yeah, of course, be a kind person. Of course, be sweet. But guess what? There are a lot of...
Those are the core skills that manifest into that. I'm a very kind person, but I'll tell you one thing, is that if you want to see what a piece of shit I am, just be on my bad side, right? As in, cross a boundary I told you not to cross. When I say piece of shit, I just mean absolutely something you don't want to be around. There's a reason why people need duality and complexity. And so men do look for those characteristics in women, but if they're not aware of what those characteristics are rooted in, they get imposters, people that can mimic those things. It's very easy for women to take agreeability, beauty, even physical attraction, and to use those things as tools. And men will, by the way, fall for it, and they will what you call project onto it. And then once that happens, you have actually what happens after in dating, which is the mask comes off. And then once the mask comes off, they're like, I didn't agree to this, not at all, right? And it's like, well, that's really who the person was, but you were too busy trying to make them something they weren't. And that goes for both men and for women.
And this is why I always say, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So if you are masking your insecurities and weaponizing things like beauty, against men, it's probably not going to shock you that you either attract a very submissive guy who doesn't have a backbone, who you resent, or a man who is maybe mirroring that and weaponizing his money against you, right? And so like ideally, you become like the type of person on paper who a quality person would want to attract, right? Because the reality is you're not, as a woman, even going to get the first date if you're not attracting that man, right? Physically. He will not, like no man's like, I'm going to ask her on a date because she drives a Rolls Royce, or I'm going to ask her on a date because she went to Harvard, and you look like sack potatoes. No.
Well, it actually almost matters zero to men. What school you went to, how much money you make.
Well, to some men,
how much status you have.
To some men, it does matter.
Well, yeah, typically men that are very masculine, and that's okay if you're into that, and we could just kind of quote you there. People are allowed to be what they're into, but I like to question those things because I know what happens to people when they're not 100% honest with themselves, is that they'll hurt the people closest to them.
Well, either way, I have one client who went to Harvard. He would like to meet a woman who went to a good school too, because he wants to have smart children. And for him, that's one of the indexes of intelligence.
Well, if he's going to associate school to intelligence,
no, I understand.
I'll send him off in a coffin.
I understand, but I'm just saying that's one of the indices for him. And I don't fault that. Just like there are some people who want to date within their religion, and we can question whether religion matters or doesn't matter, but if that's what someone wants because they want to raise kids within a certain religion or faith, that's fine, I
think that we're at a point in human history and where we're looking at, and I want you to quote that one very stat that you said before we turned on the cameras, about how many women are going to die childless before they're...
Look, the studies support that we are becoming more disconnected, men and women, from each other. And studies show that 30% of men under 30 have been celibate, not because of their choosing for, the past year. And that 50% of women by 2030, between the ages of 22 and 45, so prime kind of childbearing years, if you will be single and childless, many of whom not by choice. And by, currently actually, 50% of women who are 30 and up do not have children. Now, not every woman wants children, and there are going to be a lot of people who comment and say, why is being a mother associated with being basically like a fulfilled woman? It's not, if that's not what you want. But
it fulfills about 90% of women across the board. There's a very, very few percent of women where it doesn't, but we're not going to get into that because that's not how you actually say something true. Is that there's exceptions to everything.
Most women I coach who are still in their childbearing years, not all, but most, do want children. So, and I have some clients who don't, by the way, and that's fine. I have friends who don't, fine. That is their life. That is their journey. I'm not here to judge. It's really unfortunate.
I've talked to a lot of women who said that they didn't, and then on the second session started crying, being like, I can't believe I've lied to myself all these years. And so you have to be able to, not to say push an agenda, but you have to be able to get people to be honest with themselves about some of the most primal urges we all have as human beings. And so I wanted to be able to talk about this. And it's like, this is why this conversation I have with you is very hot. What you described there is one of the most saddest, terrifying, painful, heartbreaking statistics, because if you want to know who it really affects, it affects women.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. And that's why I love what I do.
The importance of challenging what people present when the whole world has been conditioned. You judge a tree by its fruit. The fruit right now is not looking really good. We got to make sure we go back down to the roots that actually have allowed people to grow beyond that to create good fruit. So when you brought up that statistic, what came to mind was, oh shit, if we really don't start leveling up and asking deeper questions about ourselves and what our intentions and motives are, and perhaps maybe even questioning the integrity of what we want, not only will we start to see how much our brothers and sisters begin to suffer, you're going to see the whole world begin to decline. And remember this, those who have children are going to experience something that is completely and totally devastating. So we have to do something about that. I don't think it's a small thing. I think it's a big deal. I think it's actually such a big deal.
I didn't say it was a small thing.
Huh?
I never said it was a small thing.
No, it's not a small thing. And I do believe that there's an importance to be able to have these conversations.
Yeah, we're at a fork in the road. And I think people need to start thinking about what is at stake. And here's what I'll say, and I'm not saying that this is something I, wholeheartedly stand by, but the sentiment I hear from a lot of women is that it is men's fault because a lot of the men are...
Tell me how it's working out for them.
Well, they're listening to red pill content, right? And so they're engaging in this Peter Pan lifestyle. they're not necessarily motivated all the time. Some men for sure want to have children, but I would say, per your point earlier, it is disproportionately skewed toward women. A lot of the men I work with do want children, but there are also a lot more that I hear from than women who are like, if I don't have kids, I'm okay. I got money. I want a hot girl by my arm. And I hear this more from women. And
I think that's also a big problem with the dating system nowadays, is that people do not have children in mind, when that is quite literally what has brought people together since the dawn of time. Like, if reproduction is not a conversation of topic, then your ego is. Because I noticed this myself in my dating. It's significantly improved, as in, what I call improvement is being able to get down that we don't work or we do work faster. That's called dating improvement. What's going on, everybody? I have an absolutely huge announcement. I am launching my new school. Now, this isn't just another cool way to watch more exclusive videos. If you like this one, it's a way to really start integrating all of this material, because it's been my life's work over the last 3 years. Now, the beautiful part of it is that it's constantly uploading every week, meaning that if you like the beginning stuff, that's great, but you can also grow with me. I don't just believe that the work that I do is just to help you guys. I believe that it helps me in ways access inner beauty that I've never seen and discovered before, and I want you guys to be a part of this process collectively with me. I believe that the transformational process and the growing process is one that is for those who are willing to connect with their humanity, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. The best part is it's not just the videos. It's going to be me and you in the community integrating every one of those videos and some of the parts in your life that you believe that you're having struggles with. If this is you, you will see the link in the description, and I can't wait to see you join the revolution.